Hey, Michelle, welcome to Q Live.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks for having me.
Great, great. Today, I thought we'd chat about large-scale application testing. But before we do, could you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. I have been in the industry for over 20 years. My expertise is in both PMO and project management, but also testing and how those two come together to deliver on time, on budget, and in scale what our business needs and our customers ultimately want from us.
So you mentioned something about being on time. I think that's a lot of times what people struggle with when they're testing large enterprise applications. So curious to know, based on your experience, what challenges do you see or do you encounter testing enterprise apps that may make that effort kind of hard for people to get in time and under budget?
I think that the two biggest things that we see is scope creep and scope change and business requirements, right? Business requirements are constantly changing and evolving, especially in the agile worlds that we all live in, right? And where the customers demand change and the fix now, right? They want the deliverable now. They want it yesterday. They don't want to wait weeks. They don't want to wait months. We can't do that anymore like we used to do 5, 10, 15 years ago. The other thing is because of those changes and because business requirements and business demand is constantly changing, the one area that always gets lost is testing, right? There's never enough time to test it all the way through as robust or as things, right? And we've all seen that as consumers, right? There's always a little bug here or a little glitch there. We've all learned to live with them. But if testing had more time, right, then we wouldn't have as many of those that go to market necessarily. Some of those are small, some of those are really big things, right? And oopsies that none of us want to do. So those are the two biggest things, right? The business change requirements constantly changing, and then making sure that the testing organizations and the testers within the development teams have enough time to actually test and make sure that it's a good product.
How often does an enterprise app provider, say Salesforce or something, do a release that maybe break a test that make it more difficult to test in time? Is that common, or is that?
It's very common, right? So things like Salesforce, things like Pega, things like Dynamics, or there's many of them out there, right? You can somewhat consider for the shelf, right? You buy them, and then a specific enterprise will customize those, or click and drag, or do custom development on those for your specific business needs. But yes, they do quarterly releases. Sometimes they do monthly releases. Sometimes they do weekly, depending again on the severity. If it's a security bug, you're going to get that within days. Right. And sometimes it does break your stuff. So you do have to have full regressions in addition to the customizations that you've done to that product, and to make sure that they didn't break your business processes as well, but yet providing for the customer.
So I'll be honest, I never really tested an ERP system. I think a lot of tools I would have used may not have been compatible with certain enterprise apps. So business testers, do they have the right tools to do this type of testing usually in your experience?
Sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. It truly depends on how technical that your business users are, right? And in today's market, our business users are definitely more tech savvy than they've ever been in the past. And they do want to be in there, and they do want to use the tech tools that maybe the IT organizations used in the past and that were IT specific. But we've got business people that are becoming more tech savvy and know the information. Sometimes they have the tools and sometimes they don't. I know in past experiences and in recent engagements that I've been in, we've always shared and we've always been transparent. So whatever tools we bring in, such as ExcelQ, we use it not only from a technical perspective, but we also give it to the business, and so that they can see how easy it is to use. And I think that goes back to what your requirements are when you're looking at tools, to make sure that it blends into the technology and the technical folks that are driving from an IT perspective, but also it's user friendly that a business person could use it no matter what their tech skills are. There are tools out there. There's a lot of tools as well. One of the things I like about ExcelQ is that it's all in one tool. So you don't have to if you're doing API testing, you use this tool. If you're doing UI testing, you use that tool. If you do database testing, you have a different tool. And then everybody's confused. With a tool like ExcelQ, it's all in one place. It's one app, and it's all there together. And you don't have to confuse people on when to use which one.
Absolutely. Do you find that you have to convince management to invest in a vendor tool as opposed to all the open source solutions that are out there?
I do. Especially in today's market. There has been such great progress in testing tools. You know, 5-10 years ago, there was maybe 2 or 3 tools that everybody used because that was all that was there. But with the introduction of all of the open source tools and the fact that they're open source and can be free and very cost effective, you do have to sell. You do have to make the business case of why you should have it in one tool. Why can't open source give you all the needs in a cheaper business solution? You do have to make the business case. It's a worthwhile business case, but it is an investment in the organization. It is an investment in testing above and beyond just going and getting tools off the internet and open source and playing with them.
Absolutely. But I think you mentioned one of the biggest value is that for a tool like ExcelQ, it's all in one. So you don't have to mix and match and try to make everything talk to one another and have the right output. It seems like with this all-in-one solution, we make that a lot easier for sure.
Absolutely. And then the other thing that I found when you have different tools, right? When you have 3, 4, 5 different tools, which one's the right source? Which one is the golden source on, are you ready to go to production? Which one, how do you blend all that together into a JIRA or a report of some sort to make sure that your requirements are ready to go? Again, ExcelQ's got great integration into JIRA. Again, we've used that in the past so you can see it all in one place. So not only are you testing in one place, you can see all the results in one place, and you've got the confidence that you've done all the testing that you've needed to do. Again, without, I've got to go pull a report over here and I've got to pull this spreadsheet over there and let me meld it together and make a presentation. It really saves time.
Could you also talk about the business process implemented within a Pega application and maybe what are the systems integrated as part of Pega?
Right. So Pega is a huge application, right? So for those that don't know, it is a CRM application used in many enterprises, small and big, across the world. So in implementations that I've been a part of, it is a very, very heavily integrated application with everything from many APIs, hundreds of APIs that go into many BSS and OSS systems in the telecom world, the billing systems, to almost every interface or every system that an organization has, so that, again, that rep has all of the information that they need to serve that customer on, as many screens as necessary, one-stop shop, similar to ExcelQ from a testing perspective. The business processes that I've seen followed are, right, you define the requirements, you see what metrics and KPIs you're looking at from a call center perspective, and then you implement incrementally through sprints, improvements to do all of those things. They are time consuming and they are complex. And what we've seen what I've seen is how it integrates each other. And if you touch one thing, you think you've only touched one, but it really touches 5 other things between. So your regression and your complete testing has to be there. You can't just think, I fixed this one little bug, I'm just testing that one little bug, and then I can go to production in an hour. It's much more complex than that. And you need the test cases and you need your regression scripts to make sure that how they intertwine and how Pega is behind the scenes is acting exactly how you wanted it to be all along.
So I think there's certain integrations that may throw people off when they're testing this as well. I think, is it like a green screen integration and like mobile app integrations? And how does that come into play when you're trying to create a test for a Pega application?
Absolutely, right. So from a Pega perspective, it's all about the customer, right? It's all about the customer and having all of the information for that customer in one place. It's also being able to have the customer service themselves as much as they want, whether it's a mobile app, whether it's your website, whether it's internal, you're calling your reps or anything in between. So all of that information's got to get into Pega, or it's got to get into your golden source systems that then Pega is going to pull that from. So yes, it's very extensive testing. So if you change one thing on the mobile app, that doesn't mean you only test the mobile app. You've also got to go test your green screens or your behind the scenes, your mainframes, your client servers, your Windows boxes, whatever it is that's your back end system, to make sure that everything is still connected correctly and your APIs and everything are talking to each other correctly. Just because it's one little change, it doesn't impact me. That's not true in today's world. We would like it to be, but that's never the case, especially in large enterprise implementations and applications where everything is so heavily integrated.
So besides being integrations within Pega, I'm just curious, do you ever have to test between ERPs, like from Pega to Salesforce to Oracle, that type of workflow?
Absolutely, right. So those can be, right, those can be either APIs. that in real time that you have to test. Those could be batch jobs. If you're talking mainframes or old client servers or things like that, those can be batch jobs that run every hour or at the end of every day or something in between. But yes, with ExcelQ, you're able to test both the UIs, right? So your mobile tech, your mobile applications, your Pega UIs, your GUIs, your everything like that. You can also test the APIs, but then you can also test at the database layer. So all layers of the application, all in that one place. But yes, if I'm testing Pega or my teams are testing Pega applications, we're testing all the way through it, all layers of the application.
It almost sounds like in order to do proper testing, you need to be an expert on, say, Pega or Salesforce. Am I correct? Because it seems like you have to be like know the business and then know the application. It's not like a browser app where I get it. It's like ordering something off Amazon. How do you know like all the maybe the weird points in each application, each ERP that needs to really be addressed with testing?
Right. So two ways. So in many ways, yes, you do become the expert. You do become the knowledge, the business SME, the IT SME, because a lot of times the testers are the only ones that actually know how it all comes together. So you do end up becoming a Pega SME or a Salesforce SME, like the examples that you gave. The other way to do it, and the other way, again, as the world and as organizations continue to go agile, is in your business requirements. In your business requirements, and in your features and your epics, and what you're doing in your scrums and what you're doing in your backlogs. That's where you document exactly where that becomes an expertise. And the more you shift left and have that truly written down and have it documented correctly, the less of an expertise your tester needs to be. But over time, as you test Salesforce or you test Pega or you test a certain application or a certain business function, right? Are you a residential? Are you a consumer? Are you a B2B, right? You will become an expert in those areas. And that's a great thing to use and leverage. And a lot of times that can also leverage testers into more of a development role because they know exactly where it's supposed to be. They may not know where the exact code is, but they can learn it. They can get there really quickly. And especially with the automation, scripting, and the coding, the minimal coding that you have to do in ExcelQ, that can be a launching point for testers to then become developers.
So on teams that test ERP, how many of the business are the testers actually more business versus technical? Like where would they be able to be empowered to be able to pick up a solution like ExcelQ and know what to do with it?
Right. So it kind of depends on the business, and it depends on the industry and the teams, right, and the skill sets of the business users. But I have seen it almost 50-50, right? So it's almost a 1-for-1 in some cases where there's one technical person and there's one business or UAT person. But I've also seen it where it's like 50%, right? So if I've got 10 people testing it, they've got 5. It really is a configuration. It's really up to each organization. There's no set rule. There's no set definition. It just depends on the comfort level and, again, the expertise of the business people, how involved they want to be in that testing versus trusting the IT organization to deliver their requirements.
Nice. So we touched on Pega. I know you have experience with Salesforce. So can you talk a little bit about the business processes implemented in Salesforce Velocity as well?
Okay. It's really the same, right? So it's very similar to Pega, right? You get the business requirements, you get the business flow that they want their sales reps or their consumers and their businesses to be, and then you point and click. The great thing about both Pega and Salesforce is there's a lot of automation flows. There's a lot of workflows over coding. Now, coding does not go away in those tools or in any tool or in any application, but it does lend itself to be more workflow friendly and point and click and a much faster delivery. But the first and foremost is, what does the business need? What does the business need today? What is it going to be tomorrow? How fluid is that? And do we know what we really want to build so that it can then be coded and tested correctly? It all starts with the requirements.
Are there any specific automation challenges automating, say, an ERP compared to a different kind of technology that you think people need to be aware of or that you deal with often?
The one I deal with the most, or that I see, is your legacy versus your newer apps. And we mentioned it a little bit before, like your newer apps, your web-based apps, your Pega. Pega is a web-based app. Salesforce is a web-based app at the end of the day, right? Your users are going to a URL and clicking and then doing their job or doing their requirements, what they are meant to do. Automation of the newer technologies is very good, right? That's easy to do. We've got the frameworks, we can share. We've got open source. We've got tools like ExcelQ that can certainly do and handle the jobs. The legacy apps, and what I mean by legacy apps are some of the older apps, the non-web-based apps, the non-current apps. Maybe they're not in, mainframes, or they're apps that have been around for ages and are just in maintenance modes and not really getting updated all that much. In older technologies, sometimes we struggle with those, right? And then and you have to do the offset of is it worth automating those, or are they sunsetting? Are we going to be bringing in an updated tool? Is it just not worth it? There's cost advantages, of course, to everything. But I have found with the newer apps, all the web-based apps, anything from a mobile perspective has been very easy and very cost-effective to automate. But some of your legacy apps, some of your older applications that are still up in the world can be a little bit of a struggle. It doesn't say that you can't do them, but it's probably a little bit more of an investment to write some custom libraries, to write some custom code to be able to crack those screens, crack those APIs or the database layers that aren't as easy as if it's web-based.
With ExcelQ, are you able to create custom code based on your specific use case or technology that may not have something out of the box?
Yes, absolutely. Developers or test engineers can definitely write their own libraries and their custom code, not only for themselves, but also share it within your organization so that I can write it. And then Joe, you would be able to reuse it and leverage it as well from your automation also. So that is one of a benefit of ExcelQ is again, spend the time, write those custom libraries, write those custom jobs, communicate that to the rest of the team, and they'll embrace it and definitely go running with customizations.
So when I speak with testers around ERP, a lot of times they talk about challenges around, say, dynamic content or handling tables. Do you ever run into that? And does having a vendor-based solution help maybe those out of the box that you don't have to roll your own kind of solution?
Right. So we do have that problem. I have seen that problem. We experience it on a regular basis. Something like Pega, we see that in Pega. A lot of times in Pega screens, nothing will change on the screen, and we'll have it automated, and it'll be beautiful. And then the developer will compile the code, and all of a sudden all the labels have changed, right? Even though we've touched nothing, but all the labels have changed, and now the automation has to be tweaked and adjusted to the new labels, things like that. So it does happen. It even happens in the newer tools. What we've found helps is definitely communication and partnership with dev, right? A lot of times it's nobody's fault. It is what it is. It happens. But communication with dev so that if we know that it happens or we know it's going to happen based on certain conditions, we can go ahead and plan for it versus an oops, we ran the automation and it failed and can't figure out why, and then we dig and then we realize what it is. So it's a good partnership with them to say, oh, this screen might change. We think it might based on past behaviors. Just be prepared for that. But it's also setting up your actions and your context so that they can be easily just updated really, really quick on the fly if that does happen. So I don't have a magic bullet for that one. It happens. It happens to all of us. I wish it didn't. We all wish it didn't. ExcelQ's design does help you with minimizing that and not having to rewrite it, 20 to 200 times. But it does happen.
So once you have your company invest in a tool like ExcelQ, do they just forget about it at that point? Or are there things you need to do to really bubble up the visibility and challenges that your team may encounter when you're adopting test automation, especially with the ERP maybe for the first time?
Right. So definitely never buy and forget it. Never, right? Whether it's ExcelQ or any other tool or any application that you write. Even if you buy a Pega, right? You're not going to buy a Pega or a Salesforce and say, oh, all done, right? and never think about it, right? You definitely have to, you do have to keep the visibility on it. You have to keep the training, right? Why did you invest in ExcelQ? You invested in ExcelQ for a single tool testing platform. You did it to increase automation. You did it to increase efficiencies within your organization, right? Whether it's developers and testers, the projects and the programs that you're working, right? The enhancements that you're doing to systems that need tested in the first place. So you definitely need to build your KPIs. ExcelQ does have reporting mechanisms where you can start looking at, automation versus manual. Are you hitting your targets of where you want to be from an automated perspective? Are you seeing the efficiencies of the automation? Or is automation still taking just as long as the manual test would? And if so, why, right? Are you getting the bang for your buck that you did? So you're constantly looking at the business case, the KPIs that you want to do, not only from your projects and your initiatives that you are trying to improve upon, but also your internal metrics of, am I getting the automation and the acceleration of testing and being able to deliver to customers faster that we were looking for?
So one thing I would think would be difficult, and I could be wrong, is when you're testing an ERP, when you're testing in, say, testing or dev or staging, that not having exactly like production, that when you go to production, configuration is completely different. And so all your tests didn't catch a lot of things. Is that common, or is there a way to make sure your environments are set up correctly to scale? So then when you do go to production, it is pretty much similar?
Right. So hopefully you have at least one test environment to close scale. A lot of times it is hard to be one for one, like, direct copies. A lot of places do have direct copies where a test environment is an exact copy of production. Not everybody does that. So you definitely want to at least have test environments that have at least a subset of your production data or your production-like data. Ideally, the only thing that should change when you go from a test environment to a production environment is, the URL or the databases or the configuration, right? Instead of pointing to server X, I'm pointing to server Y, and then test those things. If that's not, if it's more complicated than that, then yes, you should really look at your test environments and your test processes so that you can find as much in the test environment prior before production. That is, I am a big proponent of test environments and thorough testing, if you guys cannot tell yet, and making sure that you find as much as you can beforehand, right? Because on production night or production afternoon, to find it after you've deployed it is too late in the process.
Absolutely. So another challenge I can think of is resource challenges. You said within a lot of teams, it's usually a 50-50 split, 50-50 being more business-oriented and 50% being more technical. So what resource challenges do you face then? Do you have to do training? Do you invest in developers, getting more developers involved in testing? Any of those type of things you have to deal with?
So at the initial deployments of ExcelQ, when we first purchased ExcelQ and brought it into an organization, we definitely invested in training. This was a huge investment for that organization, and it was a huge investment in the people as well. So we spent weeks and weeks on training on how to go from a manual mindset to an automated mindset and a repeatable mindset, right? So that you built one script that handled multiple scenarios, tested many things at once to help streamline as well. So we definitely invest in training, definitely invest in the people because a tool can only do so much, right? It's the people and the people executing it and the teams behind it will actually make you, succeed or not. The tool cannot do that, right, for you. You open the box and there it is, and you install it on a server. There it is, right? It's up to the people to make it work. The other thing that we've done or I have seen done is, again, the KPIs and the tracking, what's working, what's not working, what's confusing, what do we need to go back and train on, what do we need to do. We have also invested in the dev teams, right? Because dev teams are more technical by default, and they can definitely leverage some of the automated scripts for unit testing or system testing. And then I would say definitely probably in the COVID and the post-COVID world, resources are a challenge, right? The IT market, whether it's development or testing, is a very hot market across the world right now. And so we do have to invest in the people, and sometimes people leave for other opportunities or other areas. And we have to keep bringing new folks in and retrain them or get their skill sets where they need to be, where they can jump in and use them. So all of the above are challenges. Those will continue to be challenges as everybody wants to continue to work from home and not go back in the office, and they want to be smarter and work faster and more efficiently. So those are all things we all have to manage in the new world as well.
So, Excel Q, it is an Excel Q event, but I'm just curious to know, like you said, a lot of times it's a people, not a people problem, but you need to invest in your people as well. How much did Excel Q live up to your expectations when it was pitching, full stack automation, no code automation, AI powered self healing? A lot of times people may sour on these type of terms. What your experience with what they promised, what you actually it delivered once you got it in your organization, you get your people upskilled in it, and you got it part of your workflow?
Right. So for the newer apps, like our web-based apps, our new apps, our mobile tech apps, our mobile portal apps, our mobile apps for customers, our web-based apps, it's been great. We have definitely seen the results that we were looking for, and we've definitely been able to accelerate our automation and our deployment schedules. We went from monthly to multiple times a week. And that is hand in hand with the amount of automated testing that we've been able to implement in those spaces. I will say the legacy apps, the older apps, the non-web-based apps, the client server, the thick client, the mainframes, and things have been a little bit harder. I mean, they haven't been impossible. I think we only found one that was near impossible, and then we kind of had to give up on it and let that one remain as a manual testing solution. But they do. It wasn't just out of the box for some of those older applications, And again, when you've got large scale enterprises, you're going to have new technologies and you're going to have old technologies that you've got to work together, right? Because it's not cost effective all the time to just shut down mainframes just because they're old and we don't want to do them anymore. You just can't do that all the time. So you have, enterprises, large scale enterprises are going to have old software and old applications, and they're going to have current, and they're going to have new, and they're going to have the new stuff as well. And you've got to find a way for all of that to continue to work together.
Great. And I know another benefit they like to boast is that new releases come out every month and sometimes every quarter. How has Excel Q helped you with that, though, to handle that? Does it help make maintenance easier, or how does your team cope with these changes, and how does Excel Q handle them?
Yes, so Excel Q gives us a quarterly update. It takes us, we actually treat it just like any other, like if it was a Pega monthly deploy or if it was a Salesforce quarterly update, for example, we treat it the exact same way. So we put it in a test environment and we look, okay, so what'd you change? Right? What's changed? What's gotten better? What maybe, I don't like that as much, but it's okay, right? You got to roll with it as updates come in. So we usually take about 2 or 3 weeks to test those in a test environment so that we can communicate to the team and the organization. Here's the changes, right? Here's what you're going to see when it goes to production. Here's what you're going to see who wants to be part of that beta testing, perhaps. So it's gone really, really well, and they've been a great partner. We have a deployment that is different than most folks. I think most folks are on Excel Q's cloud implementation, so it's all in the cloud. Where we chose a internal on-prem solution, right? So we've kind of got a customized Excel Q that's only for us. And sometimes there's goods and sometimes there's bad about that, but they have been great partners. They will sit with us through deployment weekend and make sure that everything works right, and that the first Monday up everything is good. The one thing I would say from a user perspective, the only thing our users or my testers usually don't like is if we've deprecated some of the code, like some of the functions. Like, hey, the function was named this before, and now it's named this, and then we get all panicked, like, oh no, is my old code going to break? And no, it's not going to break. But just could you start using the new name, because in a couple of releases it will, the new function will be the primary one versus the secondary one. But again, that's training and that's communication. When you're doing any type of quarterly update or things like that, the key is getting that information out of the release notes, getting that out of your reps at Excel Q, and turning that into communications versus oops, I found it on Tuesday and nobody told me, because that's a completely different reaction, right, from your testing community.
Awesome. Thank you so much again, Michelle, for helping share your knowledge around large-scale application testing. Before we go, though, is one piece of parting wisdom you want to leave Q Live?
I think so. My parting words to anybody working through the automation journey, whether you are just starting your testing automation journey, you're in the middle of it, or you're knee deep and automation is your thing and you're an expert at it. It's all about being efficient, using the tester's time wisely, using your own time wisely, and getting a good product out the door. And you can't do that without testers, and you can't do that without the testing tools, because otherwise we would just have a whole lot of code that doesn't work. We think it works, but it just doesn't. So testing is still a critical component of the life cycle. Don't forget about it, but yes, automate it and get it running as fast and as efficiently as possible.
Awesome. Thanks again, Michelle. Really appreciate you. Hey, Michelle, welcome to Q Live.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Awesome. So we're running out of time, so I just want to get to the questions right away. We have a few coming up. Someone asked this question earlier, and I'm curious to get your opinion on it as well. How many component service per environment do you have, and how do you handle third-party dependencies, as well as making sure each environment is up to date?
So from my take, a good investment or a good environment management team is essential for things like this, especially when you've got a lot of third-party vendors, and you've got a lot of third-party interfaces that you're dealing with as well, and to just keep up with what the environment is, what are all the different code levels from all the different applications and the APIs, what versions of API that you're doing. Also, what is your data? How current is your data? Is it maybe a production refresh from like 6 months ago, so it might not be relevant? And having, again, processes and procedures in place for things like that, so that you can prepare and keep your environments current. And it's not always an emergency; it's a well planned and thought out plan that you can execute. So I have seen dev environments that just have one interface, right? They're testing a specific interface and a specific project. And I have seen very complex environments where you have every third party interface that you can, so that you have a true near production like environment to be able to do your end to end testing with. So I feel that a really strong environment management team, that can be one people, that can be five people, whatever it is for the scale of your organization, that focuses on making sure that those environments are kept up to date and communicating within the dev and the QA teams of what the versions are, when new versions are coming, and the refresh schedules of the data is a key.
Nice. So next question. What advice would you give to other teams or organizations planning to kick off their journey in test automation for package-based applications? So maybe they're more familiar with a web app or something that's just a standard app. Any suggestions around that?
It's really about training. It's
Mm.
take the time, right? Look at the tool. Just like with everything else, do a trial. Do a trial that Goljeet mentioned earlier. Do a 7-day or 14-day trial. Point and click. Look at it. Make sure that it's right for you and your organization. But do the homework. And then invest in the people. Invest in what is the process that you want your testers to follow. How do you want them to use the tool to the best of your ability and to the best of your organization's benefit? And invest in the people that are going to be using the tool that you ultimately select.
Great. All right, let's get your crystal ball out, because someone wants to know your prediction for where do you see the future of test automation heading, and how vital do you think no-code test automation's role is in that future?
Oh, I think the future for test automation is huge. Again, we will never. Our customers, our business owners, our consumers always want things faster, right? And we're already delivering them as fast as humanly possible in many cases, but they always are going to want it faster and faster. And the only way to accelerate the testing phase is through automation. So I think the future is bright. The future will continue to grow there. I think some of the other speakers earlier did mention it doesn't remove manual execution completely. You still have to have some manual and be prepared for that, because the manual is how you get to your automated and you know what you need to automate. So that's not going to completely go away, but the dependency on manual will continue to decrease, and the demand to have it running faster and automated and in a near around the world environment will continue to increase. And then I think the second question was, what was the second part?
Where do you see the role of no code, low code?
No code. Again, no code. I think no code is going to be huge, right? Because again, the less time it takes to automate it, And the more that you don't have to have a specific coding skill set or a specific coding language to be able to automate it, the better, because you're going to be able to train more resources, and they don't have to be as technical as maybe an engineer is today, to be able to do that point and click and get the tests up and going more efficiently and faster.
Great. And once again, someone asked this question earlier, but it's a very common question. I'm curious to get your take on it. Probably time for one last question, and it's going to be, what kind of metrics are the best to focus on when building your test strategy?
Metrics for the test strategy, I would focus on the scope. What is your backlog? What is the scope of the release that you're trying to test? The amount of test cases that you are using on there, whether they're unit, whether they're end to end, whether they're regression, or a mix of the three. And then also watch how much duplication do you have, right? Are you running the same test scenario 100 times, 200 times, and you're not really doing the coverage? So I would also look at coverage APIs and KPIs to make sure that you're covering the right things and you're just not running a whole bunch of test cases that are doing the same thing over and over again.
Great advice. Thanks so much, Michelle, for contributing to Q Live. Really appreciate you, and hopefully we'll see you next time. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me. Thanks all.
Awesome. Thank you. Cheers.